Well, hi, welcome to Encouraging Conversations. I'm Judy Cruz and I have Jerry Howe joining in for chat today. So Jerry, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
I'm Jerry Howe. I've known Judy for a while now, and my favorite project right now is a blog called Leadership A to Z, where I'm exploring sometimes counterintuitive, sometimes countercultural, always thought-provoking leadership concepts that are inspired by the models and teachings of the New Testament. And so I'm
Awesome.
really interested, in what do we find there that's different than what we find in just our normal conversations in society about leading?
Yeah. And Jerry and I were talking a little bit about that, and she had heard Mandy talk, who I don't know if Mandy even focused on that in that particular conversation with her, but she's very much about food and the hospitality portion of food. That is her art and her creativity.
Yeah.
So there's also great ways to bring that hospitality into leadership. So I'm excited to talk about this with you.
Yes, I had gone through basically, I'd say Romans through about Jude, just looking for what are things in the New Testament that we can learn about leadership. And then I tried to categorize them. And you don't have to go far to get to the list in Titus and First Timothy on what leaders should have. And I was kind of struck with the fact that among the requirements of leaders was that they would be hospitable. And I'm like, I don't know if we value hospitality like that, like if it's one of the top five for what we're looking for in a leader. And it made me start thinking maybe it should be, because I think we look for people who have vision, people who are good managers, people who are decisive, people who are very motivating and inspiring. But hospitable is a little different.
And when I was going to college, I was in ministry leadership along with a business degree. And we talked about the servant leadership, how you are in there as one of the people guiding them, but also as part of the team, and very much into team building in my previous positions. But I think also that the hospitality part makes a leader approachable. It shows that, okay, I'm welcoming you in. I dare to listen to your ideas,
Yeah,
learn from you, and to engage with you. And so often you feel like you're in the principal's office when you're talking to a leader.
Well, I was in a class in the last year where someone was highlighting, they thought that the verse that was most powerful in Romans, and perhaps they thought was like a theme verse, was welcome one another then as Christ has welcomed you in order to bring glory to God. And that really stirred me, like how they really saw that verse is so critical. And I thought that's really interesting, the idea of welcoming, accepting, bring into your circle. And I thought it's interesting what you're saying about team. As a leader, do the people around us feel like insiders? Do they feel welcome? Do they feel accepted? And is there room? I feel like the dream is that there's hospitable space to risk, to try something, to offer an idea. And so much do we need that. Leaders need beyond their own resources and ideas and insights, right? We need a team. And so I totally agree with what you're saying, like the idea of creating that hospitality, of being approachable would definitely, I would hope more than approachable. I would think welcoming, inviting, drawing people. Yeah.
I think one of the words you said too was that leaders, so often they are just the visionary person. They're not getting into the details. They don't know what you do or the process of your job to accomplish this. And they don't necessarily need to, but it's helpful that, they're bringing you in to see a bigger picture, or to help dream of the bigger picture and how your steps impact.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea, because would part of hospitality be curiosity and listening? Because I think so often my picture of a leader was maybe a very opinionated person, who knew all the answers and came in with a plan. And I think that's really changed over the last 20 years. And I think about James 3, and it talks about wisdom, and it lists off things like impartial, sincere, peace loving, full of good fruit. And it's all this relational kind of characteristics for wisdom. And I think that's really interesting to think about a leader being wise in creating collaborative communities and listening to people and respecting that people that report to you do things you can't do. and,
True. Yeah.
and honoring, like you just said, like honoring that, because I know when I've been a leader and I knew that I couldn't do all the jobs that the people who reported me did, it was humbling. And it was a new experience to realize how much we all relied on each other.
I do. In my work position, I work in purchasing and an artist and a business coach. So it's interesting when I'm at my, employers, I don't know what other people do. I feel like my job is in a little silo,
Mm.
and even my boss has a general understanding, but he's going to cover for me over vacation. I'm like, I'll send you the notes so that you can do my job again, so
Yeah.
we,
I think especially if it's a smaller organization, I think that that's so much the case, that everybody has such a unique position,
yeah.
that there is often a difficulty in finding that coverage. And I think maybe it's good because then we don't take each other so for granted.
Yeah, sometimes.
Max.
I do think too that the hospitality portion too. Well, let's talk about hospitality as a word itself. I mean, so often hospitality is you invite someone for over
Mhm,
and you are serving them everywhere, right?
mhm,
But then I also think of hospitality as making them feel at home. Help
mm,
yourself.
mm.
This is your area. It's not just mine. You don't have to ask my permission,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so
and yeah, it's interesting because what is the goal then of hospitality? I think it's, to make sure people's basic needs are met. I think that was certainly where the word comes from. But I think it's an interesting idea because I think you and I think of it as making a space where someone feels comfortable to belong, that they can be themselves and accepted as themselves, that they can be so comfortable that they could go get their own tea or glass of water if they need it. Sometimes I feel like a welcoming atmosphere is when you come into someone's house and they're like, hey, could you help put the salad together? Because you know what to do with yourself. You don't feel awkward and like an outsider. You've been brought in to that group, the community that's happening. And I think that can sometimes make us feel more comfortable. So it is interesting. Is it the tasks getting done that's hospitality, or is it more this sense of inclusion and welcome? And I don't know a better way to say it. I really dislike any environment which creates outsiders.
right. And the word came immediately of family,
Yeah.
so
Well,
although not all families know about hospitality to each other, no, but
Well, and so it's interesting you say that. I don't know if this will throw us off, but I had an idea over the last week or two. And it's just like, I'm curious about this. Can we belong where we don't fit in?
it in this society and culture, it's difficult now, isn't it?
I think so. And I was thinking, as Christians, can we belong where we don't fit in? And maybe, I guess I'm thinking of fitting in as feeling like you aren't just like everybody else, or you don't think just like everybody else, or you don't, do what everybody else does. But can we still belong? Because I feel like that idea of family is what the Christian community is supposed to be, right? We're a family. The Apostle Paul calls us brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Jesus is the firstborn of many, and we've been adopted as God's children. So there's a sense of family. So we all belong, even in these moments where we just don't see things the same.
No, and we aren't designed to all be the same. And that's a hard part for all of us to absorb, because we live in a world that's trying to, do not, my favorite verse, do not conform to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And how often is our identity is like, I have to do like so-and-so, or I want to achieve exactly what they achieve, but you're not exactly them.
Mm.
How about achieving something more?
Yeah, I think comparison is such a difficult thing. Like I don't think it has much good fruit. I'm just like trying to look at my own life, and it doesn't seem helpful.
I was processing that in prayer the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good place to do it.
Ah,
But yeah, this idea of creating a space for people to belong, and I've been trying to figure out how in conversations I'm having, especially difficult conversations,
yeah.
how can I create hospitable space for the other person? And I'm trying to experiment, and I would love, as people listen to this, if you have better ideas, I want to hear them. But like, how do I help people to feel comfortable? I keep going back to First John and that perfect love drives out fear.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want the opposite of a space of fear. I want a space of hospitality and acceptance and love. And so I've been just doing things like, hey, I know this is a hard conversation, but I want to know you to know that I'm for you and I'm in it. We're friends. After this conversation, we're going to be friends. Trying somehow to communicate
Yeah.
us, like our whole relationship does not depend on us coming to agreement in this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had some of those conversations lately too.
How did you know? Were you reading my journals?
I'm not.
No, I did actually. And, it was a rough thing. And I'm like, I have to state this. I don't want any bitterness to stay in between us. So I'm going to state what I felt in this. And, and I want to go forward. It's not going to change how I feel about you, but I just need to state that, and I think a good thing to do is ask permission. Is it okay for me to share with you? So they're agreeing to an openness, even if they're not understanding or used to what that kind of openness is.
I like that respect. That's a good idea. Because, like as I've gone through different seasons as my kids have been growing up,
Yeah.
I feel like I've come to moments where I keep on saying, this happens in relationships where sometimes it's hard for people to easily connect. It gets a little hard sometimes, but that isn't the whole story, right? There's different moments in our relationship in different seasons, and I love communicating. I'm committed to this. I'm going to keep walking with you, and hopefully that helps create the space we need to talk about the hard things.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's helpful, but it is, everyone's personalities are different too, and many run from difficult conversations or from unknown pressures. I mean, because we don't understand what everyone is going through. So even if you were a leader in a business and you were asking someone to do this or come up with something, and you don't know that 15 times in their life they've done the same thing and been told they were a jerk, or they never have good ideas. And so you're putting an unknown pressure you don't understand. So finding ways to share that with them, or, read the body language, because, a lot of emails go around asking for things versus the verbal, face-to-face conversations. But
yeah, that's been even harder, I think, with COVID's limitations. People haven't been in the same space. I mean, this is helpful, at least where we can see each other. But it has gotten a little different to get those cues that we used to get when we interacted with each other.
Because
so you have to say it.
Then you can sense, is there, maybe even just asking the question, does everything about that feel comfortable with you? Any, questions, any things that, just like good coaching questions, right?
Oh,
Anything you think would hinder your progress in this?
I like to, I have a friend and he's so wise, and he often talks about the process.
Yeah.
So it takes some of the heat off of the issue by saying, this is how the process is going to go. How is that process going for you? How is the feedback loop working? And, I think that can be another way. But I like what you were saying too about it made me think affirming what we find valuable, like if it's a coworker or it's
Yeah.
someone that we supervise, oh, kind of again dispelling some of the fear, because I think people get assumptions or fears in their mind. And so if we can say what we really think, like, I think this is really great, except this part. This is, so you've done great work, and I have confidence that we're going to be able to work through this one issue that we have. That kind of frames it like, okay, they don't think that all I did was a big mess. There's this one issue, and try to help people. I don't know, again, create that space of welcome and inviting that help. I was so I love the idea of when we're facing an issue, we don't want it between us in our relationship. We
No.
want to face it together. And so again, how can we create that space that I think is far more productive in solving problems by creating that hospitable. I want all that good stuff that you have inside of you, even though maybe they made a decision that didn't turn out well. I mean,
And we've got to learn and try something somewhere too, right?
well,
Because
exactly. Is there space to fail? Is there space to make mistakes? That's
should be.
well, and that's what I think hospitable space would be, because I think when there isn't, there's so much tension that I think mistakes still happen because people are human, and we can't always see what's going to happen. So sometimes we make a decision that in hindsight we would have made a different one. So it's all going to happen, but when it's so tense, I think it's so much harder to work through it to a better place.
Well, I've worked in product development departments, right? So you have mistakes all the time. You have failures all the time. And you learn from it and you discover and uncover. And we need that in the personal relationships too. But you're right. So often our walls are up and we're thinking it has to be just so. And what if the way they do it, which isn't yours, your process is better? We're missing some of the innovation with those things.
That's so interesting, because I was thinking about some of the things you've shared, and it was coming together in my mind, like the idea of the hospitable space looking a little different for different people.
Yes.
What kind of environment for a meeting is going to invite creativity and innovation for people who are different than you are, and at what kind of time does it require? What kind of atmosphere and expectations does it require? Because I think as the leader, those are some of the decisions we're making as far and that relate to hospitality.
How to guide the ship in the right direction.
That's true. That's true. Oh wow. I haven't ever guided a ship, but it does make sense.
Kayaking. That's about my big ship, right? But
Yes. So, but yeah, I'm so grateful that we're having this time to discuss these things, because they've been rattling around in my brain and I want to grow. So I like some of the things that we've drawn out here. I like the idea of asking permission before having the tough conversation.
yeah, that's something newer to me too. And I worked with someone trying to it's a newer person in my department. And so I'm sharing with them what I do because they've learned a bunch of the other positions and how they can be helpful. And as I said, I'm usually in the silo, but I can use coverage here and there. So and then she shared some of her learning style, which was very helpful. So sometimes it's getting an understanding of how they like to process. And then it's much easier to invite them in and make them feel welcomed.
That's an interesting idea. How much of hospitality requires some understanding of how, like you said, learning styles, personalities, like how the different people interact. I know that some people, when they hear a new idea, may not like it at first, but then in a few days, they may, as they've had time to consider it, really like it. Whereas I'm one of those people, I can rattle off 100 new ideas a minute, like I love new ideas. And so I've had to learn what it takes to give people what they need so that we can move forward together, because that's the goal of leading. You're not leading if no one's with you.
And if you're doing all the talking or all the ideas, it's not helping the others, which I can do a lot too. I think you and I have probably been in enough groups where there's some people, they have these great things coming because you can see the wheels turning, but everyone else is talking, so they haven't dared to speak up and share, so how to bring them out and engage them without, because some hate that spotlight too, which is difficult.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as I was doing some of the blogs. I thought about how I've been in environments where you use the sticky notes to write down your ideas and put them on the board.
Yeah.
And how I think it's been a really great tool in some of the groups I've been in, because those who don't want to share out loud are not as persuasive maybe, but have a great idea, have some insight, because maybe they're one of those people who are more reflective, and man, do we need that, being able to have everybody write down their ideas, put them up on the board anonymously, sometimes people guess, but so that you can kind of just look at the ideas and then discern together which ideas are the ones that we want to focus on. And I was thinking that was one way. I was trying to think if there are other ways, but I think, thinking about creating hospitality for people who maybe aren't good at putting their words together on the spot, sharing them out loud, but we still want them involved. How do you get that to be, like you said, like in product development, how would you get those ideas out so that you could make a better product?
And I think, like you said, a lot of it too is having the written, because some are more, adept at the writing, and analytical things versus the verbal processing of, I think it might be good. I don't, self-confidence in that. We never know why.
Well, and you think the leader then makes the choice of how the meeting is going to go too. And so the format of the meeting as well can create more hospitable space for people who need more time to process. I joke that I'm like a microwave and my husband's like a crock pot, a slow cooker. And so he, will think about something for a month, and all of a sudden there'll be all this wonderful, feast coming out of all that he's been thinking. Whereas I'm coming up with ideas. It's like my buzzer's going off, ding, 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 all the time, and just that's helped me a lot to realize, there needs to be both of those atmospheres. How do you make people be able to walk together and have hospitable space to problem solve together and to plan together and to create vision together?
Now, because I knew you first, well, I've known you for a variety of reasons, but you did a lot of study with John Maxwell.
Yeah, for a while I spent some time in there and in his books, and it's been neat to, different seasons to sit under different leaders, because I think that everybody has their ways of thinking about it. And he certainly has a lot of rich resources, and I think has been able to articulate things clearly, which helps us all, because I think sometimes being able to look at something like that, a resource like that, gets us all on the same page. So we can all, like, even if we were trying to, let's say we're trying to cultivate a more hospitable environment, using a third-party resource and bringing it in and saying, let's just talk about one aspect of this chapter a week, I think could be a way to begin building that culture. Because, first we're talking about how can I be a hospitable leader, but then it's like, how can I make this culture of our workplace or a nonprofit, our church, our home, a place where we're all working towards this goal and we see this as beneficial. And I think that it can catch on. It can be, worth the investment to people once they feel what it's like to be in an atmosphere where we're all for each other. And like you said, we're not competing, we're not comparing, but we're valuing each person, and we're trying to create that space where people can take risks, say what they're thinking, be able to share an idea which maybe isn't the winning idea, because you need to be able to share those ideas to get to the winning ideas. And
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think it also takes more than one round the table. So often we're trying to accomplish everything in one hour meeting. And I'm like, well, let's revisit it. Now that you've planted the seed, let's see what sprouts up.
Well, and would you say that sometimes it's good to give the team a break and come back to it on a different day? Like letting things simmer. I'm finding that more valuable lately. Not trying to, because I like to get things done right now. If this is urgent, it's urgent. But sometimes I think letting it simmer, like my husband, he thinks about things
Yeah.
longer than I do, can be helpful.
Well, I think there's moments for both, right? There are some things that are going to have to be done quickly, and other things, I mean, especially if you're looking at a new direction or, a 5 or 10-year plan, you can't just nail that out in one weekend, in a special retreat away or something. So I think having some follow-up is good.
Yeah, and leaving a little bit of that room to make adjustments so people feel like they can still be heard.
Yeah.
I think that's true too. So
Well, Jerry, I am so glad that you were able to join today, and this is great. I'm excited to see what's coming ahead for you as you continue in this leadership question area. What is leadership A to Z is your blog? Your
yes, that's
blog
my
or
blog.
a blog? Okay.
Yeah, that's my blog series right now on theleaderproject.net. And so
Okay.
I would love more people to join the conversation because I'm exploring and discovering and growing myself. And I really need more people's input to do that. So I hope
Okay.
some of the people listening right now will check it out.
Now, are you going to do it like a Facebook group or a page or something where that might be a good place to share with some people too?
Well, I'm on Facebook and I have my speaker and writer page and I'm doing some posting there. So that would be another great place
Okay.
for people to connect with me and continue the conversation. Yeah, I put a few videos up, just trying to figure out how best to engage with people. And so this is another great way. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate the honor of being on today.
Yeah, and encouraging conversations is we've got it on the Facebook group here where you can leave comments, questions, and we're also on YouTube. And yeah, if you have questions or ideas for us, let us know. So we thank you all. We just want to pray for you and say that, may God show you the ways that you can just increase the hospitality in your leadership areas, because we all are leaders, whether it's just in our family, our neighborhood, one of the kids groups. There's a lot of ways where we can welcome others. And so God, we just thank you that you give us all that we need.
Yes, Lord, I do. I pray that we could welcome one another as you have welcomed us in order to bring you glory. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Sherry. We'll talk with you soon and hope you'll join us again.